Welcome to the Her Voice Shines podcast, where we celebrate the power, brilliance, and resilience of women everywhere. I'm your host, Shanasia Washington. Join us as we share inspiring stories and insights from extraordinary women who have found their voice and are making a difference. Together, we'll create a ripple effect, illuminating the path to visibility and empowerment. Let's break barriers, shatter ceilings, and lift each other up. In each episode, we dive deep into the journeys of women who have turned their challenges into triumphs and their dreams into reality. Whether you're looking for motivation, guidance, or a community that understands your journey, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and remember, let your voice shine. Whoop. And just like that, I'm back like I never left. I am your fabulous host, Shanasia Washington, streaming from none other than H-Town. It is Houston, Texas, baby. Y'all know I'm an H-Town aficionado. Energy always real big, but today it's on a little bit of a different level because this guest, y'all, she's so fire. You know what I'm saying? We normally do it a certain way, but we're going to take it a little bit different. And I'm going to read your bio, Miss Deesha Dyer, that's who's here. And I'm going to let you see her in just a second. But I have to tell you, you guys are in for a treat. And I know that she's going to bring some information that you guys need to hear. So let me start off with this bio, which is amazing. This is Deesha Dyer. She's a philanthropist, an award-winning strategist, on-the-ground community organizer, and executive operations expert, working her way up from a 31-year-old community college student who served as White House intern for President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama. Deesha ended her government career as the White House Social Secretary, a highly coveted senior position. She is currently the founder and president of a social impact agency, Fasten, where she coordinates transformational partnerships between communities and operations. In 2014, Deesha co-founded BigGirl.World Global Scholars, an organization that empowers, educates, and equips Black teen girls to travel the world while also tackling the racial disparity in the study abroad. She is a curator of multiple scholarships for Black women in politics, travels, wellness, and animal care, and sits on the board of the Humane Society of the United States. Serving as a Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics resident fellow in 2019, Deesha designed and led a study course called Imposter to Impact. A renowned speaker, known for her engaging and authentic delivery, she's an expert on topics ranging from diplomacy, events, women leadership, confidence, race and ethnicity, and social change. Deesha was included in Marie Claire's New Guard of Women Changing the World, the Root's most influential African Americans, and profiled in Women Who Run the White House by Essence. She's been featured in Vogue, Travel Noir, and the Washington Post, and has also delivered commentary on CNN, MSNBC, and NPR. Deesha has written for Oprah Daily, Glamour, and Lonely Planet, and was awarded the Woman of Excellence Award by the District of Columbia. In April 2024, Deesha released her highly anticipated debut, Undiplomatic, and Y'all is Fire, about her untraditional path to politics and advocacy. Undiplomatic has been praised by Oprah's Book Club, Taraji P. Henson, and Michelle Obama, and is a must-read and is used as a resource for confidence and worth at institutions all across our country. For her impact through Undiplomatic, Dyer was recently awarded the prestigious Larry Neal Writers Award. Now, if y'all not already spent enough saying this sister's dope, I don't know what to tell you, but I have to bring her to the stage. And without any further waiting time, here's my very beautiful guest for today.
Hello. Hi, everyone. The Her Voice Shines podcast. How are you? I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you for that intro. That was lovely.
I love it. And they know that I treat this place. This is not like an everyday thing. This is life, because I ran from this space for so long, Deesha. People say, Shanasia, you just got to do the thing. You got to put the thing in the earth. You just got to do the thing. And I ran for so long. So to be in a place where this is just life and natural for me, it just gives me great joy when you guys say yes. When you guys say yes and come, it does it for me. So listen, Deesha, we have to just jump right into this, like, off the top, right? People are going to always ask you, I know you get this, what's it like to work with the Obamas, right? Mm-hmm. I know you get that all the time.
I do. I get that all the time. I mean, it was lovely.
I mean, it was a book, but you got to tell us what it was.
Yeah, no, I mean it's great. I mean it's great to work for them. First, thank you for having me here again. Um, and I mean they are wonderful. I mean they were two people that um, made history, and not just by who they were and the appointments and the positions that they had, but also just the stuff that they kind of put into office and the way that we operated at the White House. And yeah, it was wonderful. I think at the end of the day, I always like to be real about it and say, I mean, they were also bosses, so it was a situation where it wasn't, there was days where I was frustrated, and there were days that, that was hard, that were harder than others. It was a place of business, it was a place of work. So definitely, it was regular, but they, in general, they're wonderful, two wonderful human beings that I was so blessed to get to know and to work under.
That's absolutely amazing because I'm always driven back to 2007. I was an undergraduate at Houston University, HBCU in Austin, Texas. I always plug my school. Y'all know I love it.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that.
I got to be a representative, but at that time I was in a speech class. Public speaking is what they would call it. And there was this little guy, little short Caucasian man who wrote for one of the columns in the Austin paper. And I was such a homebody, Deesha. You would have thought I was 1,000 miles away. I was just 2 hours from home, but I was home and all this kind of thing. And he told me, he stopped me. He said, I have an opportunity to bring 2 students to this dinner. He said, there's a guy named Barack Obama that's going to be there, and he has a really good run at being the president. He said, I want you to come. And do you know, Deesha? Deesha, listen to this girl. And also to my to be fair, my great grandmother, my grandfather's mother had recently passed, and he was coming to pick me up for the weekend to go home with that.
Wow.
And do you know, Deesha, with my homesick, trying to get back home stuff, I was like, well, I never heard the name. I said, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go. Long story short, I didn't go.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I did not go, Deesha.
Wow.
And from that, I didn't. That was in 2007, and I had the opportunity to go to dinner with Barack Obama. And from that time, and we have a lot of parallels. It's actually a little scary, but from that point on, Deesha, I was just kind of like, and I had became immersed with them after that because I didn't know the name at the time. I didn't come from like a lot of politic heavy family. They know it, right?
Yeah, we didn't know. Yeah,
and it always just kind of stung me. And the people know how much I love that family, and I tell this story. And they say, girl, one day you're going to get your glory. It was something that always stuck with me to have that moment. And then to get to a place to where I started to think intentionally about kind of like yes and no's. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was one of those shifts.
Yeah.
But, Deesha, I did tell you in the bio that she had an unconventional kind of path.
I did.
I love unconventional. She had an unconventional path to becoming social secretary. I want you to tell us, how do you think we limit ourselves with the right path? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough question for me to answer because I never want anybody to feel like the path that they took was not the right one for them, or that in some way I am ever saying that there's, that people didn't take the path, the right path, whatever it was. But I think that we are in a space in which, we have been conditioned to walk this pathway of, 4 years of college, get a job, then get a master's, then go to law school or get a doctorate. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that mentally, a lot of us are not prepared to do that. And then we are also on such a path to make money and to pay back the debt from doing all these things that we were supposed to do. And so for me, I'm thankful that none of that stuff worked out, because I couldn't imagine paying 4 years of school and also for a master's and a law degree. I couldn't do that. And so I think that, it's up to us to show kids, like youth, a different way. Maybe community college is a good way, to first learn about what you want to do. I think that we need to watch what we ask people, like 15 years old. How do you know what you're going to major in college? Like, you've only been alive 15 years. After you're done, you graduate college, what says I have to get a full-time job in my major right away? All these things I think just set us up for, doing things in a way that's standard, right? Instead of exploring maybe our creativity and our curiosity, which we can't afford to do because we've got these student loans. And so I don't think that there's a right or a wrong path. I just think that in this country, at least, there is a path that kind of puts us in the path of debt and unhappiness because we're following what other people expect of us and not what we expect of ourselves.
Mm. That's definitely that's a big one because we talked a little bit in the first segment about like undergraduate, and I can't tell you how many of all of my friends had, 6-figure debt by the time, we were at the stage to start buying homes and stuff. Luckily for my undergraduate years, I was a pesky kind of knocking on the financial aid office every day. Deesha, they
Yeah.
name.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
I said, y'all got any money for me? Y'all got any more? And most days for probably about 6 weeks, it was a no. And then finally, I was walking my backpack, and this guy says, I think a scholarship may have came up. I used to knock on, it was a small campus. I used to knock on the door every day, Deesha. Hi, do you got a scholarship money?
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I had to do it, but it allowed me to have undergraduate free, because I just couldn't, even though my parents were saying, well, they were going to take out, they didn't want me to get the loan, but they were going to be willing to pay this $1,000 or so per month on top of trying to send me money for it. Was just too much.
Wow.
And I don't even know how I got the courage at like 18 or so. I don't know where it came from, girl. I don't know where, because typically that's not my thing to be the pesky one. Hey, what you got? But that was my story. But I didn't want to give that debt to my parents, basically. So that was my story. And going through that. To think, when we're talking about unconventional paths, I love the fact that you like this hip hop head. Deesha's for the culture. I mean, she really is big Philly energy. Like I'm big H-Town, big Philly.
Yes.
And what was really I loved about your journey was that you use this hip hop really in your application process and all these different things to even get in the White House door was so powerful. I think what we sometimes have to have the conversation about what those unconventional things actually mean in the career path. Because I love the fact that you had, I mean, that was something that was like unique and core to you, but it came out as something that was needed somewhere else where it was just kind of normal for you in everyday life. So I definitely wanted to highlight that. Tell me this before we move on. What does hip hop mean to you? I know we're gonna talk about this because y'all these are hip hop head, okay? Like I know y'all
I am.
They call me Deesha, but I'm a hip hop head myself. But what does it mean to you specifically?
I mean, I think for me it's the culture. I mean, the culture of, people who made beats and they made rhymes and they made art. They danced, they did graffiti. So all these people who did this, who were united together in the ghetto, in a place that there wasn't a lot of money, there wasn't a lot of resources. They were a community. So for me, the hip hop culture itself is a community of people that took our God-given talent and took, our situations and we turned it into art. And to me, it's art that, out of every art that there is and every musical genre that there is, hip hop is so universal and it's so global and unites us in so many ways. But it started really right in the ghettos and in the hood. And it started, by people, being creative, a love of rhyme, of dancing, all those things I just mentioned. And so for me, what hip hop means to me is just it's community. That's where, especially in Philadelphia, where I really got the base of like my people and who they were. This was back in the day before we had social media. So you didn't really, you rhymed and you got on an open mic, because you loved it. And you, of course, wanted people to see you and to hear you and whatever. But there wasn't this pressure of, I got to look this way. I got to have the image this way because thousands of people are going to see it. And so to me, the culture is so much. And I think that that's what I knew best. And so that is why, I wrote about it for my White House application, because I was like, this is what I know. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I know national security or economics or all these things. But what I do know is hip hop as a culture can be used, to teach. And so to me, that's what it means to me. It's just a base and huge part of my life, that I still carry everywhere I go.
I love it. And see,
Mhm.
and that's what I meant about those seeds, because in case y'all don't know, Deesha's behind the BT Best Party Love and Happiness. So let me just try. I have to break it down, Deesha, because we gonna connect dots here. Because she is behind that. I mean, that party, if I watch that, I still fall on the floor and roll around. That party to me is everything. That party is like cultural. I will never forget it. I will never forget the moment that I was sitting on my couch. I mean, I was like, it took me to a different place. You know what I mean? I never thought that I would feel that way about watching presidents on TV. This is what I get to do, Deesha. I don't get to do this.
Right.
I know this girl had Yolanda Adams and Aretha. I'm like, what? You want to just throw your sock at the
Yeah, right, exactly.
so good. But, that was something that you had in you that, I mean, y'all, this party, look, Deesha, throw me a party, okay? Because if you can throw a party like that.
I mean, that party, it was phenomenal. And it wasn't, I was a social secretary, but there was a whole host of people, including BET, the resident staff, my staff, social office, that really came together to make that party happen. And I think that the thing that gets lost in that sometimes, talking about that party, is that during the day, we had an education workshop for students. And so some of the artists and the producers, or the stagehands, or the people behind BET executives and whatnot, they sat with kids that were interested in any kind of part of the music business or entertainment business, and had an in-person workshop. And so that was during the day. And then there was the concert that actually happened on the South Lawn. Then there was the party inside the house. And so I think that people don't see like how much we did for the students and the education bit on that party, and then the concert, and then the party. And so we just, from all angles, I feel like that was really, Mrs. Obama, this is how she operated the house. Is like, she's like, how can we maximize this as much as possible? We have all these celebrities here. We have access to students. We can make a connection. And so that really was the blueprint that she made for the People's House. And I just was the lucky one that was able to help execute that. Right. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun and hearsay, but it was also a lot of work. But it was a lot of fun.
Yes, but the fruit of that labor, I'm telling y'all, it still hits. Years later, because and I say this all the time. This is what makes me get up and go, like, literally every day, Deesha. It's like, and I say this often in this podcast, like, the goal for Sinead, I don't know what she's going to be doing, but the goal is to go empty every day. And what that means, I'm going to give all I got every day, Deesha.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not for work. Yeah. Maybe I just need to give all the peace today. Maybe I just need to give all the rest today.
Yeah.
But that is the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that every day, day in, day out, and you're just trying to, do the best you can to survive, you don't understand the seed that you're putting in the earth. Yeah. So I want to tell you, I know that it probably was a grind, but you have people like me that will never live that down. You can't tell me, they can't tell me nothing about it, Deesha. You can't play on that. You can't play my time on it. So I know that in that crux kind of, it felt like that, but you got something that's gonna always live in this world.
Yeah. I think that's the importance of our storytelling, and that's the importance of recording and having an oral history of our art or our words, because no matter what happens, they are going to outlive us. And so you have a choice when you're on this earth to be able to leave a piece of you through your art or through your podcast or through the parties that you did or whatever it is. And that, for me, what motivates me every day is the fact that everything's going to outlive me. My book is going to outlive me. My party's going to outlive me. Any events I did, my career is going to outlive me. So that is the legacy that I'm leaving. And so that's why it's important for us to tell our stories and to be in conversation and to document things, because, if that's what we're leaving. And as we're seeing right now in the world, those things are being erased. And so we have to make sure that we preserve them. And so I'm happy that the party still gets a lot of love because that was a moment in time.
I love it. Now you've occupied many spaces. These, of course,
Hmm.
for women that look like you and me are not typically looked at to hold positions of power. Lots of time when we're even in our positions of power, people still disregard us as not the person of power.
Yeah, yeah,
And you talked about that too in the book. I think at that time you were doing, I think, the hotel in the book, and people would
yeah.
ask around. I've experienced that too. As a matter of fact, in the place that we met, I was a manager of a global team, and couldn't even find a peer. My whole entire career, I never had a peer
Wow.
manager that was my age, and the age
Mm,
bracket. Never manager, never a peer, not one time in 7 years, not one.
wow.
So for me, it was very difficult. I shared with Deesha when I saw her and she came into a safe space conversation. I needed to see her. I was in a pit,
Mm,
and this is
mm,
why I tell you about showing up every day. I know it was probably
mm,
a job for Deesha. She had a contract there, but I was in
mm,
a right, and I had to see her face to like, okay,
mm,
there's a other side of this. Here's somebody
mm,
who's had this unconventional path.
mm.
Um, Tell me about how to insert your voice in
Yeah.
spaces that are not typically designed for us to thrive.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give an involved answer because the answer would have been different probably a year or two ago. But I don't believe that any space is not for us, for our voice. I feel like if God placed us there, if the universe placed us there, if that's what people believe, there's a reason that you're there. And so I think that for me, I had to stop with the mind for me. I had to stop with the mindset of this is not for me. If I'm here, like somehow I'm here for a reason. And so I have a choice. I have a choice that I could adapt and I could say, like, let me be like everybody else. Let me not ruffle any feathers. Let me not speak my mind. Let me be quiet. Let me get along and get along. Or I could say, let me just be who I am, which sometimes is the person that raises the contradictory opinion. Sometimes the person that everybody looks at like, here she goes again. Or sometimes the person that makes people uncomfortable with their thoughts and opinions. But most of the time, my thoughts and opinions are representing the community or the people that are not in that room. And so I think that for me is I had to make sure that I was not going by what I would look like or what people would think about me. If the worst that happens is that I don't get invited somewhere fun or people talking about me at the happy hour or two coworkers or two people are chatting about me on their text message, what does that don't got nothing to do with me? And I don't really care. And so I'd rather be myself and stand up and say, actually, my voice belongs here. So that's what I would say. And I also have the discernment now that I didn't have when I was younger to know that when spaces are not safe for me. So there's a difference of a not safe space and a difference of the space typically does not have people like me in it. And so if it's not a safe space for me, I'm out. Like I'm out. Like I don't need to. Why am I forcing myself into this? And let's be clear that we're not just talking about spaces that are not black. There are black spaces that are not welcoming to other black people, and so I have to remember that. Or there are black spaces that I'm in that are not welcoming to other black people, and I'm like, well, I don't belong here either. If somebody who's low, doesn't make as much money as we do, or can't dress up as much as we do, or whatever, they're not welcomed here. Well, neither am I because that's where I come from. That's my root. And so I've had to really like lean into that as my career was climbing because I was in all these fancy rooms and I was very thankful for it. But I was like, but where are the people that we're fighting on behalf of? They're not invited in here. So why am I here? Um, and I had to realize that. But for now, like like I don't mind looking like an odd person. I don't mind looking weird or awkward. I don't mind looking defensive nor aggressive because that's the role that God has given me right at this point in my life. And if any opportunity I lose or anybody talks about me or whatever else because I'm this way, then that wasn't for me. And I accept that.
Mhm. Very powerful. And it's interesting you talk about the discernment piece because I find
Mhm.
myself when I tell people the past 6 months has been I don't know what's I'm like what am I doing? I don't even
Yeah.
know why like I really don't because I mean I left
Yeah.
my business services for 13 years and just left in 2021 and then started like figuring things out. And people were thinking like when I left, you're gonna do something in financial services, you're gonna start like a tax business, like what are you gonna do? And then I just kind of didn't do that, right? I started teaching
Mm.
started working with primarily African American women on voice and, visibility. And this is how,
Mm.
really started to work on those things. But then there was still some things I was running from, Deesha, i.e. this space. There were some things I was running from. And I don't mean like sometimes we think that because we're doing something, it's always green light, but you can be doing a lot of stuff and not be productive. Let me just tell you, you can be doing a lot of things and you can be doing things that don't even really mean anything. So now for these past 6 months or so, primarily through podcasts, I've met all kinds of people, but I'm like, how do these people even enter my podcast? It just seems like the most random thing. And meeting the most random people like in different places. And I go in those rooms like, what am I even doing here? But there is this thing that sometimes tells me I don't want to be there. It tells me that this space, no matter about these titles and stuff, I don't feel like somebody else can come in here and I have to protect them, right? There's a situation where I'm feeling that I'm having to constantly defend opinion, defend appearance, defend this and the other. Oh, it's a problem for me. It's a big problem, and I find myself being it. And I'm naturally a nurturer, and I have a pretty good sense of like, okay, something not right. What's going on here. But when you said that in other spaces that are also too Black, and they sometimes can be just as harmful as races with people of other races.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from classism, to be honest. I think that, I think this happens a lot. This happens a lot everywhere where it's just like, look how diverse this room is. And you're like, yes, it's all Black people, but how many of these Black people are like, considered lower class? Or how many of these Black people, are LGBTQ? Or how many of these Black people, don't believe in God? Maybe I don't really know. But I think that there is something there that like, we think that Black means diverse. And it does not, because we often segregate within each other and put each other in boxes. And I speak very clear about that. As somebody who's been at the top, I speak very clear about that. Like, I was never a person who got to the White House and was like, let me bring in everybody famous or rich or all these things and not bring in like, a community group. Like that was just not going to happen for me. Which is why I think the role works so well, because I was always like that. I didn't have to be taught that. I didn't have to be told that. Mrs. Obama, the way she wanted to run the house is the people's house. I was already like that. So I was doing that stuff at home in Philly before this even happened. So it was a natural slide for me to be like, of course we're going to do a student thing during the day. Of course we're going to, invite people formerly incarcerated. Of course we're going to it wasn't a thing to me. It was like, this is not, and I think I got praised a lot for it because people had not dared to do something like that before. But we also, the first time we had a Black president and first lady who were community organizers and everything else. And so they laid the foundation for that. And I was just so happy that I could help, build the house from there.
I love that. So that's that community piece that was already in you. So now you have, but you've been through a lot of different roles and everything before you touched the White House. Deesha was doing all kinds of jobs and everything. And then she was doing a lot of different jobs and stuff for the White House. So now you were climbing the ladder or whatever, and then you're building this hope to leadership. After leadership in this space, then Deesha says, well, I'm going to go and start Cooking Fasten. Like that's her firm, Cooking Fasten. Anything in terms of leadership that changed along the way, specifically as it relates to, transitioning from leadership in the White House, and then now here's this leadership component that Deesha has to walk through for Cooking Fasten.
Yeah, I think leadership in general, like I had to take accountability, I think, for when I wasn't a good leader. And I think that was really because my imposter syndrome wasn't in check. And I was like, let me try to get my confidence. Let me exude my confidence by power. And that didn't come out all the time in being a manager. And so I think that once I transitioned to Hook and Fasten, which was, 3 years after we left. 3 years after we left, I had to remember that like anybody that was coming in to work for me had to get the Deesha that atoned and was accountable for her actions, but also they weren't going to be with me forever. Like they were going to go on to different things. And it was my job to be a vessel. It was my job to be, to teach them all I could, or to be a good leader, to model that and to go on from there. And Hook and Fasten didn't start because I always wanted to be a boss or I wanted to have my own company. It started because when I left teaching at Harvard, when I stopped being a fellow, I couldn't get, it was hard to get a job during the pandemic because the jobs that were senior for me weren't happening because of the pandemic. And so that's when I started my own business. So it wasn't like like everything I do is not because I have a plan, to be honest. It's because like I'm at a crossroads and just like, well, I'm at a crossroads here. So let me try this and see what happens. And so I think I struggle now a little bit in the impact space as a leader because I'm not as flashy as I used to be, and that's my choice. Like I don't think that awards equal impact. You know, a lot of people knew me from the White House, and so they're like, she's not there anymore. So the relevance of getting invited places or getting this or getting that, and unfortunately, we're in a world that when people see glitz and glamour, they think that that's the people doing the most for the community. And so I've had to remember that part of my leadership is to never forget the community and be involved in community and make sure that local organizations are getting the money they need and make sure that we're being that bridge to, you know, for-profit companies and that we're including communities. So now leadership looks a little bit different, you know, like than it did before, where it was so noticeable and it was recognizable, and I was getting awards, and it was nice and it was lovely. Now I have to remember that like part of being a leader is kind of saying, you know, those things are wonderful and beautiful, but if they don't happen for me, it doesn't mean that I'm not a leader. It just means that I'm a different space than other people right now, still leading the way, but in a different space.
Mm, I love that. That
Mhm.
you know that power of. I mean, it's come back again. It's a running theme because you know it's actually come through probably in many of your segments here. Is that community? It runs through
Mhm.
you. You are
Yeah, it
community.
does.
I mean, it
100%.
does. I mean, it's relevant in all of the answers and stuff like that. And I love that because that tells me that, you know, you're true to your core. You know,
Hmm.
and, you know, it's not going to take a long time to smell around and sniff about who you are
Yeah.
because,
Yeah, no.
you know, it comes out in the words and how
Yeah.
you do that.
Yeah.
The other thing I think about leadership, because, you know, you talked about, you know, your firm was growing, you had lots of calls and things, people that are really true to community and then they try
Hmm.
to build brands. I always ask them because I find this right because I'm like, it's all this stuff, but how do I stay close enough to the mission
Hmm.
of doing the on the ground work without seeming so far away? Because even
Hmm.
with like, you know, of course, if you want to grow and scale, you know, people are going to have to touch it and it's going to have to grow. But for some of
Hmm.
those things, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I want to be the person talk. I want to be the person because it feels so close to here. So like
Yeah.
it kind of shifts of like wanting to be close to the thing. Not saying that you're hands off just because you're a leader, but
Yeah.
wanting to be close to it, but also too thinking of a mindset to I'm scaling. So I know that some people are going to have to help me. I can't do it all.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we have a great team. And so, you know, but I'm very hands on because most people who are hiring Hook and Fasten to do work, they're looking for me. And so, because my name is recognizable, they trust me, they trust my experience, they trust my career. And so, I have to be a little bit hands on. I think that you can decide what you want to be hands on with, like as far as doing invoices, scheduling, contracts, presentations, like can't putting them together. All the administrative stuff I try to put on to another team member because I want to focus on actually interacting with the community, interacting with the corporation, making sure that that's all good. And so I think that I decide that I want to still be involved because that's what they hired our firm for me. And so we're not that big yet that I have like thousands of, you know, people that I can kind of give it to. So I have to remember that, but that means giving other things to other people, but also, you know, with us, like when we have meetings with the community or whatever, we make sure that like I make sure that the team is in on it because they sometimes have really great ideas that I may not have. And so no meeting is singular, no meeting is without two people on the phone who Hook and Fasten really. And that is important to me because of that reason. And also I want the community to see that like this is the team that we're trusting with this. Like these are the people, like this is dope, like we're good to go. But also like everything we do involves the community's input. Like I would not like, you know, say let's figure out a way to feed the houseless in Philadelphia without contacting the social workers and the peer counselors and all those people who work every day to try to eliminate that problem. And so I think that, like, you know, I will always be close to it, you know what I mean? But then the other stuff, the hands off work that I can give up is the administrative, the clerical, some of that stuff that's a little bit more time consuming. But I actually really like being hands on. I like being close to the mission because that checks me, in my privilege, and it checks me in who I'm accountable to. And I'm accountable, yes, also to my mental health and my bank account and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm accountable to the community.
Mm-hmm. That is so powerful. And the stigma before, we see people with the awards and the accolades and, different things of that sort. And I find myself, and, I've had a decent run, since trying this on my own. And, it's so interesting, people will say, oh, we even seeing me talking this and that on the podcast. They're like, oh, we didn't know you were like this. We just having a conversation like a sister. I'm like, well, who do you think I am? I'm like, this is what you get in the earth. Like, I don't have time to do all this extra stuff. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, what is it all for? If I can't get to and this is an everyday question, Sinead, what is it all for? What is it all? And that's what keeps me motivated and grounded to get up and do the thing in authenticity, and also to that my Father is telling me to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what I love to highlight here. Because I think sometimes people get to trying to climb the ladder and get the thing. And I'm not saying that all those things are not great and noteworthy, but you have to stay grounded to the actual mission so you can do the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to go here because, we always talk about the power of yes, right? I said yes, and, I pivoted, and Deesha did some bold yeses. Y'all got to be
still doing them.
Deesha was out here doing some bold yeses. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how did she did it, but also too, there is a power in no. No is also too a power move.
Yeah.
Can you think about maybe the boldest no?
Yeah. Ooh. I would say that the boldest no, I mean, there's a lot, so I don't even know how I'm gonna answer this. But I think that the boldest no that I think of is, I would say 2018, when I was living in New York, and I decided to kind of stop dating, stop going out as much, all these things, because I knew that I was chasing validation, and I was chasing acceptance, and I was chasing love, because I'd just come out the White House. So it was like a year before that. And so I was trying to find these things to fill voids of, like, how can I feel just as important as I did for 8 years? Or how can I feel, and I think I had to do a lot of no's to things that felt good, or instant gratification, or parties, or other things like that. I had to say no, because I was working on taking my validation back and taking my confidence back from having to put it in other people. And so, to me, some of the boldest no's that I've ever done were the ones that I chose myself first. And I will tell you that it's an everyday battle. Like, I don't think that that it's like you get that down, because things look really shiny sometimes, and you're just like, oh, it's like a high. Like, you're like, oh, if I just do this one thing, or if I get this one thing, I will feel so validated. I will be worth it. I'll get all the approval and the applause. And it's a constant no, to stop yourself and say, no, like, I need to get that from internal, or I need to get that from the things that I do. And there's nothing wrong with applause. There's nothing wrong with being told you look nice, or those there's a difference. But when it becomes your main source of your confidence, that's when you have to check it. And so my boldest no's, I think, were to things that would get me that instant gratification of feeling validated, of feeling loved, of all these things. Instead, I had to sit, and sometimes very sad, with being like, nope, like, Deesha, don't give in to that. Like, don't give in to that, because then you're chasing the high of having to get another one, another one. But if you repair your relationship with yourself, you don't have to chase that high anymore. You can just know that what you've done, your body of work, and who you are on this earth, is as imperfect as that is, is good enough, like is validating. And I think that I can look back and say that that's true. So I'd say that some of my boldest no's have been to the instant validation and gratification of people's praise.
Mm, that is a good one, and I really wish more women would go through that walk with themselves,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get the walk until, like I said, maybe 2020, 2021, when I was going through kind of my pit,
Yeah.
like battling COVID and all this kind of stuff. But I was literally in here internally picking away.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm not the same anymore. She's
Yeah.
gone. She is
Mm-hmm.
gone. She can't show up to everything. She can't be everybody's savior. She don't care if you're going to talk about. She is gone. And when people started to come back around, I think there was also too some hurt there, because like the newer
Yeah.
version that emerged, right? We're not doing all this kind of stuff. People
Yeah.
didn't,
Yeah.
they didn't necessarily agree with it. It was just a difficult, and these are people that you love forever,
Mm-hmm.
and you would think that they would kind of understand. This is nothing personal. I've done it.
Yeah.
But it's a bold thing. And like now I walk the earth so much differently. It's kind of like, if it's for me, it's for me, Deesha. If it's not, Sinead, you're not going to be doing we're not going to roll around shedding no tears.
Mm-hmm.
I am just moving with intentionality.
That's right.
The things that are supposed to come, they will come, and the ones that don't.
Yeah. And it's going to take a while. It takes a while. And I think that I just have to have the patience and pray for the patience. But again, it's every week battle. Like, I don't think I don't know if I'll ever perfect it, but I'm in such a place that I have to be okay. I have to be okay with that. And I'm thankful for that, because my blood pressure is thankful for it. My type 2 diabetes is thankful for it. I'm way more healthier. Even if it takes a little bit longer to feel good, I'm a lot healthier.
Okay. Thank you, Deesha. We're about to wrap. I have to ask Deesha this though, because the journey,
of course,
it's been beautiful. You've had I know it's been a lot. I read it, and it's a beautiful, beautiful. And I tell people all the time, like I talk to young people, I said life is just a combination of peaks and valleys, baby.
Yeah.
If you're on a peak and valley, that's just what this. If I could describe life and just a phrase, I would say combination of peaks and valleys. I don't have no fancy, I don't got all that. So I've seen such a beautiful mix of that. Such a beautiful mix of like the highs and lows. And for you to get to this place now that looks to be so healthy and just relaxed and just, pure. Like I told you, from the time I saw you on the screen, I was like, okay. Because, you see people on the screen who just virtual at this time. You're like, oh, okay, well, hey, that's nice to meet you. I said, no, that's a real one. Like that one right there is, you could just get it. So from getting to this place in your journey and kind of looking back to when you were, even maybe before even filling out that White House application, but maybe that place in you, if you can go back and say, here is Deesha, maybe at that time the girl, and then here is Deesha now. What would you tell that girl, or maybe tell that young woman? It could just be a piece of advice, just kind of looking back, and this may change in 10 years from now. We don't know. But from your seat now, what would you tell her?
Yeah, I think that I would say, there are so many things. I think that, you don't have, I think what I would say is like, you don't, like, there is nothing you have to do to like stand out, to be like, there's nothing that you have to do to like be different from everybody else. There's nothing that you have to do to like get attention, because you naturally, like, the way you are one of one. Like, there is not, you maybe, identical twins are the closest, but like, you are one of one. Like, your DNA, your genes, your hair, your everything, your personality. And so I think that I would say, those things that you did to get attention or to get validation or to stand out, all of those things were lovely. Not all, but a lot of them were lovely. But who you are, when you were born January 15th, and what you bring to the world and your natural love for people, that's enough. That's enough right there. You don't have to, write the most amazing book, or you don't have to have the most successful company. Yes, it's nice to write a great book, and it's great to have a great company. Like, we all want that, because we all do need to make money and pay bills, and we want to be comfortable. But I think that I would tell her that just who you are is enough. And that's not going to become clear until you're in your 40s. And thankfully I lived to tell the story, because again, I have type 2 diabetes, I have hypertension, I have high cholesterol. all because I spent so much time, not because I didn't exercise and eat right, because I spent a lot of time like stressed and worried about how can I, be like other people, or how can I change myself, or who's going to like me this week? How can I do all that? So I think that I would tell her that she's just wonderful the way that she is, and everything wonderful and everything great will come from you just being your absolute self. And to listen to that. That's what I would say. But I'm thankful I got the lesson now. I didn't wait till I was 70 to get the lesson. I'm thankful that I got it now.
And that's what I was going to say, because there's some people that never get the lesson. They leave the space
No.
and they
Yeah.
never get it. And that's really, really unfortunate. But I tell you guys, it never feels like, me and Deesha been chatting up 45 minutes. I know it didn't feel like it because
No, not at all. Actually, no.
I know, but it really didn't, right? And I have so many more questions here, but I have to be respectful for the time. But I want you guys to get a glimpse of this lady, because I told her that I wrote, and I'm gonna find that notebook. It was the last thing that I do. I told her back in 2020 when I met her virtually. Well, I wrote that I was going to connect with her. Y'all, my life wasn't together, still really together, but I told her in that notebook that I was going to reach out to talk to her, because I seen her at the time I really needed her. But this is the part in our show where we cue to Mrs. Dyer for final thoughts. I always tell my guests this is a place where we asked you. I'm going to tell Deesha to maybe give us her one sentence mantra, maybe, of how she lives through life, how she navigates the space, and just really give us some really good parting words. And I'll be right back after that to close the show.
Yes. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for following your calling, and the example that I think so many people, especially Black women, will have at following their calling and just trying something new and doing something new. I think that's not to be underestimated in you. So thank you for having me on, and thank you for doing that. I think that I don't know if I have one mantra, one affirmation, but I will say that curiosity has never let me down. It's never let me down. And so follow the path of curiosity in your life, and what excites you, and could it be sewing, could it be running, could it be doing a podcast, and nurture that as best you can. You don't always have to monetize it. You can just nurture it. And I think that that's so important, because we'll get bored sometimes of our careers. We'll get bored of the everyday, of the routine, but the things that we're curious about, we won't get bored of, because they're just so fun and they're so new. And don't be afraid to look silly or to try new things. I just started a Substack yesterday, right? Like, don't be afraid to try new things and just to do things. And so I'd say that right now I'm leading with curiosity, and that is one of the best decisions that I've ever made.
What a beautiful time, Deesha. And I definitely work to live with that in curiosity. And you guys know I'm always transparent about me starting this space and me coming in like literally in August of last year and just doing this thing, literally just doing it. I have never in my life done anything in my brain, nothing more natural than this. I want to tell you guys, I've never done anything in my life natural. I am not, when I get up and here record, I am not stressed. I am going to talk to and serve the way that he has called me to do it. And I'm okay with that. So when you see my face, I want you to know that you are able to do the thing, but it's going to take you to get out of the way.
Yes.
It's been a beautiful episode of the Her Voice Shines podcast. Again, Sinead, you're watching your fabulous host. I tell you, miraculous things happen when you let your voice shine. And like the church folks say, I love you. It's nothing you can do about it. And I'll be back next time with another amazing episode here on Her Voice Shines. And we're out.